Hello, I'm Matt Battersby and I study acting and theatre making at the London College of Music. Welcome back, or welcome to, depending on whether you watched the last ones or not, our next remote recorded reading of a play. This is A.A. Milne's The Boy Comes Home, following on from the wonderful success of Our Importance of Being Earnest, which if you haven't watched, go and check it out. Why did I choose to do The Boy Comes Home? Well, it's a lovely play. It kind of takes place in a dream world. It discusses what happens at the end of horrific things. So it talks about what happens at the end of World War One. And although we're not quite in a world war, I think there are similarities there. And also, there's a really poignant moment because we're university students, and most of the people in this reading are first years. And The Boy Comes Home deals with these themes of someone coming home after a long time away and going home and being a different person. Now, many university students are going home months earlier than they thought they would, and I'm sure their parents have got fears that they've become different people. Maybe they have become different people or changed in some ways. Whether that's a good thing or not isn't for me to say. But there's some really strong themes of that here, and I just think it's a beautiful play. So we've got a wonderful cast. I'm not doing narration anymore. I roped Chelsea in to do that. So I hope you enjoy, and take care of yourselves. Stay safe. Sit back and enjoy. The Boy Comes Home.
Dream a little dream of me.
Scene. A room in Uncle James's house in the Cromwell Road. Time. The day after the war. Any room in Uncle James's house is furnished in a heavy mid-Victorian style. This particular morning room is perhaps solider and more respectable even than the others. From the heavy table in the middle of it to the heavy engravings on the wall. There are two doors to it. The one at the back opens into the hall, the one at the side into the dining room. Philip comes from the hall and goes into the dining room. Apparently he finds nothing there, for he returns to the morning room, looks about him for a moment and then rings the bell. It is 10 o'clock, and he wants his breakfast. He picks up the paper and sits in a heavy armchair in front of the fire. A pleasant-looking, well-built person of 23, with an air of decisiveness about him. Mary, the parlour-maid, comes in.
Did you ring, Master Phillips?
Yes. I want some breakfast, please, Mary.
Breakfast has been cleared away an hour ago.
Exactly. That's why I rang. You can boil a couple of eggs or something. And coffee, not tea.
I'm sure I don't know what Mrs. Higgins will say.
Philip gets up.
Who is Miss Higgins?
The cook. And she's not used to being put about like this.
Do you think she'll say something?
Well, I'm sure I don't know what Mrs. Higgins will say.
You needn't tell me, If you don't want to, anyway. I don't suppose it will shock me. One gets used to it in the army.
Philip smiles pleasantly at her.
Well, I'll do what I can. But breakfast at 8 sharp is the master's rule, just as it used to be before you went away to the war.
Before I went away to the war, I did a lot of silly things. Don't drag them out of me now. 2 eggs. And if there's a ham, bring that along too.
Well, I'm sure I don't know what Mrs. Higgins will say.
Exit Mary. As she goes out, she makes way for Aunt Emily to come in. A kind-hearted mid-Victorian lady who has never had any desire for the vote.
There you are, Philip. Good morning, dear. Did you sleep well?
Rather splendidly, thanks, Aunt Emily. How are you?
Philip kisses her.
And did you have a good breakfast? Naughty boy to be late for it. I always thought they had to get up so early in the army.
They do. That's why they're so late when they get out of the army.
Dear me. Should have thought a habit of 4 years would have stayed with you.
Every morning. 4 years. As I've shot out of bed, I've said to myself, wait! A time will come. It doesn't really give a habit a chance.
Well, I dare say you wanted your sleep out. I was afraid that a really cosy bed would keep you awake after all those years in the trenches.
Well, one isn't in the trenches all the time. And one gets leave. If one's an officer.
You didn't spend much of it with us, Philip.
I know. But you didn't understand, didn't you, dear?
We're not very gay, and I know you must have wanted gaiety for the little time you had. But I think your Uncle James felt it. After all, dear, you lived with us for some years, and he is your guardian.
I know. You've been a darling to me always, Aunt Emily. But Uncle James and I...
Of course. He's a little difficult to get on with. I'm more used to him. But I'm sure he really is very fond of you, Philip.
I always used to be frightened of him. I suppose he's just the same. He seemed just the same last night, and he still has breakfast at 8 o'clock. Been making pots of money, I suppose.
He never tells me exactly, but he did speak once about the absurdity of excess profit tax. You see, jam is a thing the army wants.
He certainly gets it.
It was so nice for him because it made him feel he was doing his bit, helping the poor men in the trenches.
Enter Mary.
Mrs. Higgins wishes to speak to you, ma'am.
Yes, I'll come. I think I'd better just see what she wants, Philip.
Tell Miss Higgins to come here. At once, please.
Exit Mary.
Philip, dear, I don't know what Mrs. Higgins will say.
No. Nobody seems to... I thought we might really find out for once.
Perhaps I better go.
Oh no, you mustn't. You see, she really wants to see me.
You?
Yes, I ordered breakfast 5 minutes ago.
Philip, my poor boy. Why didn't you tell me? I dare say I could have got it for you. Though I don't know what Mrs. Higgins...
An extremely angry voice is heard outside. And Mrs. Higgins, stout and aggressive, comes in.
You called for me, Mom?
Yes, I think if you perhaps...
I sent for you, Miss Higgins. I want some breakfast. Didn't Mary tell you?
Breakfast is at 8 o'clock. It always has been as long as I've been in this house. And always will be, until I get further orders.
Well, you just got further orders. 2 eggs, and if there's ham...
Orders. We're talking about orders. From whom in this house do I take orders, may I ask?
In this case, from me.
In that case, Ma'am, I wish to give a month's notice from today. Inclusive.
Certainly. In fact, you probably prefer it if my aunt gave you notice. And then you could go at once. We can easily arrange that.
Philip takes out a fountain pen and chequebook.
What do you pay her?
£45?
12 into 45... I hope you don't mind a Cox check. Some people do. But is this quite a good one?
Philip tears out the cheque.
What's this?
Your wages of your notice. Now you can go at once.
Who said anything about going?
I'm sorry, I thought you did.
If it's only a bit of breakfast. I don't say but what I mightn't get it, if I'm asked decent.
Then let me say again. 2 eggs, ham, and coffee. And Mary, bring the ham up at once. And I'll get going on that. Thanks very much.
Well.
Mrs. Higgins exits speechless.
Is that what she says? Isn't much to worry about.
Philip, how could you? I should have been terrified.
Well, you see, I've done your job for 2 years out there.
What job?
Ms. President. I think I'll go and see about that ham now.
Philip smiles at her and goes into the dining room. Aunt Emily wanders round the room, putting a few things tidy, as is her habit, when she is interrupted by the entrance of Uncle James. James is not a big man, nor an impressive one in his black morning coat, and his thin, straggly beard, and now going grey, does not hide a chin of any great power, but he has a severity which passes for strength with the weak.
Philip down yet?
He's just having his breakfast.
James looks at his watch.
10 o'clock.
He snaps it shut and puts it back.
10 o'clock, I say. I say 10 o'clock, Emily.
Yes, dear, I heard you.
You don't say anything.
I expect he's tired after that long war.
That's no excuse for not being punctual. I suppose he learnt punctuality in the army.
I expect he learnt it, James, but I understood him to say that he'd forgotten it.
Then the sooner he learns it, the better. I particularly stayed away from the office today in order to talk things over with him. And here's 10 o'clock, past 10, and no sign of him. I am practically throwing a day away.
What are you going to talk to him about?
His future, naturally. I have decided that the best thing he can do is come into the business at once.
Are you really going to talk it over with him, James? Are you just going to tell him that he must come?
What do you mean? What's the difference? Naturally, we shall talk it over first, and naturally, he shall fall in with my wishes.
I suppose he can hardly help himself, poor boy.
Not until he's 25 anyhow. When he's 25, he can have his own money and do what he likes with it.
I think you ought to consult him a little, dear. After all, he has been fighting for us.
Now that's the sort of silly sentiment that there's been too much of. I object to it strongly. I don't want to boast, but I think I may claim to have done my share. I gave up my nephew to my country, and I suffer from the shortage of potatoes to an extent that you probably didn't realise. Indeed, if it hadn't been for your fortunate discovery about that time that you didn't really like potatoes, I don't know how we should have carried on. I think I've told you before, the excess profits tax seemed to me a singularly stupid piece of legislation, but I paid it, and I don't go boasting about how much I paid.
Well, I think that Philip's 4 years out there have made him more of a man. Doesn't seem somehow like a boy who can be told what to do. I'm sure they taught him something.
I've no doubt they taught him something about bombs and which end a revolver goes off and how to form fours. But I don't see that sort of thing helps him to decide upon the most suitable career for a young man in after-wars conditions.
Well, I can only say you'll find him different.
I didn't notice any particular difference last night.
I think you'll find him rather more... I can't quite think of the word, but Mrs. Higgins could tell you what I mean.
Of course. If he likes to earn his living any other way, he may. But I don't see how he proposes to do it, so long as I hold the purse strings. Perhaps you'd better tell him that I cannot wait any longer.
Emily opens the door leading into the dining room and talks through it to Philip.
Philip, your uncle is waiting to see you before he goes to the office. Will you be long, dear?
Is he in a hurry?
Yes.
He says he is rather, dear.
Couldn't he come and talk in here? It wouldn't interfere with my breakfast.
No.
He says he'd rather you came to him, darling.
Oh well.
He'll be here directly, dear. Just sit down in front of the fire and make yourself comfortable with the paper. He won't keep you long.
James takes the paper.
You should have had a nice sleep, dear, while you could. We were up so late last night listening to Philip's stories.
The morning is not the time to make oneself comfortable. It's a most dangerous habit. But I nearly found myself dropping in front of the fire just now. I don't like this hanging about, wasting the day.
James opens the paper.
Yes. You mustn't neglect your duties, Emily. I've no doubt you plenty to do.
All right, James, then I'll leave you. But don't be hard on the boy.
I shall be just, Emily. You can rely on that.
I don't think that's quite what I meant.
Emily goes out. James, who is now quite comfortable, begins to nod. He wakes up with a start, turns over the paper and nods again. Soon he's breathing deeply with closed eyes.
Stars shining bright above you. Night breezes seem to whisper, I love you. Birds singing in the sycamore tree. Dream a little dream of me.
Philip comes in.
Sorry to have kept you waiting, but I was a bit late from breakfast. Are we going to talk business or what?
A bit late. I make it just 2 hours.
All right, Uncle James. Call it 2 hours late, or 22 hours early from tomorrow's breakfast, if you like.
Philip sits down in a chair on the opposite side of the table from his uncle and lights his pipe.
You smoke now?
I what?
You smoke.
Good heavens, what did Yoke think we did in France?
Before you start smoking all over the house, I should have thought you would have asked your aunt's permission.
Philip looks at him in amazement and then goes to the door.
Aunt Emily! Aunt Emily! Do you mind my smoking here?
Of course not, darling.
Of course not, darling.
Philip puts back his pipe in his mouth.
Now, understand once and for all, Philip. While you remain in my house, I expect not only punctuality, but also civility and respect. I will not have impertinence.
Well, that's what I want to talk to you about, Uncle James. About staying in your house, I mean.
I don't know what you mean.
Well, we don't get on too well together. And I thought perhaps I'd better take rooms somewhere. You could give me an allowance until I came into my own money. Or I suppose you could give me the money now, if you really liked. I don't quite know how Father left it to me.
You come into your money when you are 25. Your father very wisely felt that to trust a large sum of money to a mere boy of 21 was simply putting temptation in his way. Whether I have the power or not to alter his dispositions, I certainly don't propose to do so.
Well, if it comes to that, I'm 25.
Indeed. I had an impression that that event took place in about 2 years' time. When did you become 25, may I ask?
It was on the Somme. We were attacking the next day and my company was in support. We were in a so-called trench on the edge of the wood, a damn rotten place to be. And we got hell. My company commander sent back to ask if we could move. The CO said, certainly not, hang on. We hung on, doing nothing. You know, just hanging on. and waited for the next day, of course. The botch. Knew all that. And had it on us nicely. Dear old Billy. He was one of the best. Our company commander, you know. They got him, poor devil. They left me in command of the company. I sent a runner back to ask if I could move. Well, I had a bit of a scout on my own and found a sort of trench 500 yards away to the right. Not what you would call a trench, of course, but compared to that wood well, it was absolutely Hyde Park. I described the position and asked if I could go there. My man never came back. I waited an hour and sent another man. He went west too. Well, I wasn't going to send a third. It was murder. So I had to decide. We'd lost about half the company by this time, you see. Well, there were three things I could do. Hang on. Move this trench against orders. Or go back by myself and explain the situation. I moved. Then I went back to the CO and told him I'd moved. And I went back to the company again. That was when I became 25. Or 35. Or 45.
Yes. No doubt points like that frequently crop up in the trenches. I am glad that you did well out there, and I'm sure your colonel would speak kindly of you. But when it comes to choosing a career for you now that you have left the army, my advice is not altogether to be despised. Your father evidently thought so, or he would not have entrusted you to my care.
My father didn't foresee this war.
Yes, but you make too much of this war. All you young boys seem to think you've come back from France to teach us our business. You'll find that it is you who'll have to learn, not we.
I'm quite prepared to learn. In fact, I want to.
Excellent. Then we can consider that settled.
Well, we haven't settled yet what business I'm going to learn.
I don't think that's very difficult. I propose to take you into my business. You'll start at the bottom, of course, but it will be a splendid opening for you.
I see. So, you've decided it for me? The jam business?
Is there anything to be ashamed of in that?
No. Nothing at all. Only it doesn't happen to appeal to me.
If you knew which side your bread was buttered, it would appeal to you very considerably.
I'm afraid I can't see the butter for the jam.
I don't want any silly jokes of that sort. You were glad enough to get it out there, I've no doubt.
Oh yes. Perhaps that's why I'm so sick of it now. No. It's no Good. Uncle James, you must think of something else.
Perhaps you've thought of something else.
Well, I had some idea of being an architect.
You propose to start learning to be an architect at 23?
Well, I couldn't start before, could I?
Exactly. And now you'll find it's too late.
Isn't it? Aren't there going to be any more architects or doctors or solicitors or barristers? Because we've all lost 4 years of our lives. Are all the professions going to die out?
And how old do you suppose you'll be before you start earning money as an architect?
The usual time. Whatever that may be. If I'm 4 years behind, so is everybody else.
Well, I think it's high time you began earning a living at once.
Look here, Uncle James. Do you really think you can treat me like a boy who's just left school? Do you think 4 years at the front have made no difference at all?
If there had been any difference, I should have expected it to take the form of an increased readiness in obeying orders and recognise authority.
You're evidently determined to have a role. Perhaps I better tell you once and for all. I refuse to go into the turnip and vegetable narrow business.
And perhaps I better tell you, sir, once and for all, that I do not propose to allow rudeness from an impertinent young puppy.
I remember annoying our brigadier once. He was covered with red. Had a very red face, about 20 medals, and had a cold blue eye. He told me how angry I was for about 5 minutes, while I stood to attention. I'm afraid you're not nearly impressive enough, Uncle James.
Oh. Fortunately, I have other means of impressing you. The power of the purse goes a long way in this world. I propose to use it.
I see. Yes. That's rather awkward, isn't it?
I think you'll find it very awkward.
Yes.
With an amused laugh, James settles down to his paper, as if the interview were over.
I suppose I'll have to think of another argument.
Philip takes out a revolver from his pocket and fondles it affectionately.
What on earth are you doing?
Souvenir from France. Do you know, Uncle James, that this revolver has killed about 20 Germans?
Oh. Well, don't go playing about with it in here, or you'll be killing Englishmen before you know where you are.
Well, you never know.
Philip raises it leisurely and points it at his uncle.
It's a nice little weapon.
Put it down, sir. You ought to have grown out of monkey tricks like this in the army. You ought to know better than to point an unloaded revolver at anybody. That's the way accidents happen.
Not when you've been on a revolver course. I know all about it. Besides, it is loaded.
Put it down at once, sir.
Philip turns it away from him and examines it carelessly.
What's the matter with you? Have you gone mad suddenly?
I thought you'd be interested in it. It shot such a lot of Germans.
Well, it won't want to shoot any more. And the sooner you get rid of it, the better.
I wonder, does it ever occur to you, Uncle James, that there are about 100,000 people in England who own revolvers and are quite accustomed to them and who have nobody to practice on?
No, sir, it certainly doesn't.
I wonder if it will make any difference, you know. One gets so used to potting at people. It's rather difficult to realise suddenly that one oughtn't to.
I don't know what the object of this tomfoolery is, if it has one, but you understand that I expect you to come to the office with me tomorrow at 9 o'clock. Kindly see that you are punctual.
Uncle James.
I have no more.
Damn it, sir! Stand to attention when you talk to an officer.
James instinctively turns round and stiffens himself.
That's better. You can sit down if you like.
Philip motions James to his chair with the revolver.
What does this bluff mean?
It's quite serious. Sit down.
Philip points the revolver at his uncle.
Threats, eh?
Persuasion.
At the point of a revolver, you settle your arguments by force? Good heavens, sir. This is just the very thing that we were fighting to put down.
We were fighting. We, Uncle. You're humorist.
Well, you, if you prefer it. Although those of us who stayed at home...
Yes, never mind about excess profits now. I can tell you quite well what we fought for. We used force to put down force. And that's what I'm doing now. You're going to use force. The force of money. To make me do what you wanted. Now I'm using force to stop it.
Philip levels the revolver again.
You're going to shoot your old uncle.
Why not? I've shot lots of old uncles, Lanstomers.
But those were Germans. It's different shooting Germans. You're in England now. You couldn't have a crime on your conscience like that.
Ah, but you mustn't think after 4 years of war. One has quite the same ideas about the sanctity of human life. How could one?
You'll find that juries have kept pretty much the same ideas, I fancy.
Yes, but revolvers often go off accidentally. You said it yourself. This is going to be the purest accident. I can see it now in the papers. The deceased nephew, who was obviously upset.
I suppose you think it's brave to come back from the front and threaten a defenceless man with a revolver. Is that the sort of fair play that they teach you in the army?
Good heavens, of course it is. You don't think you wait until the other side has just as many guns as you do before you attack. You're really rather lucky, strictly speaking. I ought to have thrown half a dozen bombs at you first.
Philip takes one out of his pocket.
As it happens, I've only got one.
Put that back at once.
You hold it in your right hand, so taking care and keeping the lever down. Then you take the pin in the finger so. But perhaps it doesn't interest you.
Put it down at once, sir. Good heavens, anything might happen.
Does it even occur to you, Uncle James, that there are about 3 million people in England who know all about bombs and how to throw them, and...
It certainly does not occur to me. I should never dream of letting those things occur to me.
It's rather against my principles as a soldier. But just to make things a bit more fair, you shall have it.
Certainly not, sir. It might go off at any moment.
Oh no, it's quite useless. There's no detector. Now then, let's talk business.
What do you want me to do?
Strictly speaking, you should be holding your hands over your head and saying, "Kamad!" However, I'll let you off that. All I ask from you is that you should be reasonable.
And if I refuse, you'll shoot me?
Well, I don't quite know, Uncle James. I expect we should go through this little scene tomorrow. You haven't enjoyed it, have you? There's a lot more of it to come. We'll rehearse it every day, one day. If you go on being unreasonable, the thing will go off, of course. you think that I shouldn't have the pluck to fire. But you can't quite be certain. It's 100 to 1. That I shan't, only I might. Fear is a horrible thing. Elderly men die of it sometimes.
I'm not to be bluffed like that.
You're quite right. You're not that sort. I made a mistake. I shall have to do it straight off. After all, 1, 2...
Philip, mercy. What are your terms?
Good man.
Philip picks him up by the scruff and helps him into the chair.
That's the way to talk. I'll get them for you. Make yourself comfortable. In front of the fire, till I come back. Here's the paper.
Philip gives his uncle the paper and goes into the hall.
Stars shining bright above you. Night breezes seem to whisper, I love you. Birds singing in the sycamore trees. Dream a little dream of me.
James opens his eyes with a start and looks round him in a bewildered way. He rubs his heart, takes out his match and looks at it, and then stares round the room again. The door from the dining room opens, and Philip comes in with a piece of toast in his hand.
Uncle James.
What have you been doing?
Breakfast? Rather late, I'm afraid.
That's all right.
Anything the matter? You don't look your usual bright self.
I, seem to have dropped asleep in front of the fire. Most unusual thing for me to have done. Most unusual.
Let that be a lesson to you. Not to get up so early. Of course. If you're in the army, you can't help yourself. Thank heaven I'm out of it. I'm my own master again.
That's what I wanted to talk to you about. Sit down, Philip.
James indicates the chair by the fire.
You have that, Uncle. I should be all right here.
No, you come here.
James gives Philip the armchair and sits by the table himself.
I should be dropping off again.
Righto!
Philip puts his hand to his pocket. Uncle James shivers and looks at him in horror. Philip brings out his pipe, and a sickly grin of relief comes into James's face.
I suppose you smoked a lot in France.
Rather, nothing else to do. It's allowed in here.
Yes, of course.
Philip lights his pipe.
Well now, Philip, what are you going to do, now that you've left the army?
Burn my uniform and sell my revolver.
Sell your revolver, eh?
Well, I don't want it now, do I?
No. Oh, no. Certainly not, I should say. I can't see why you should want it at all. You're in England now. No need for revolvers here.
Well, no, I hope not.
Quite so. Well, what next, Philip? We must find a profession for you.
I suppose so. I haven't really thought about it much.
You never wanted to be an architect?
Architect?
James rubs his head and wonders what made him think of architect.
Or anything like that?
It's a bit late, isn't it?
Well, if you're 4 years behind, so is everyone else.
To tell the truth, I don't feel my mind much anymore. Anything you like except a commissionaire? I absolutely refuse to wear a uniform again.
How would you like to come into the business?
The jam business? Well, I don't know. You want me to salute you in the mornings?
My dear boy, no.
Alright, I'll try it if you like. I don't know if I shall be any good. What do you do?
It's your experience in managing and handling men which I will hope will be of value.
Oh, I can do that alright. Uncle James. Do you realise that I'm never going to salute again? Or wear a uniform? Or get wet, really wet? I mean, or examine men's feet? Or stand to attention when I'm spoken to? Or lots more things. And best of all, I'm never going to be frightened again. Have you ever known what it is to be afraid, really afraid?
Well,
No, you couldn't. Not really afraid of death. I mean, well, that's over now, good Lord. I could spend the rest of my life in the British Museum and be happy.
alright, well, we'll try you in the office. I expect you want a holiday first, though.
My dear uncle, this is holiday. Being in London is holiday. Buying an evening paper, wearing a waistcoat again, running after the bus. Anything. It's all holiday.
Alright, then come along with me now and I'll introduce you to Mr. Bamford.
Right. Who's he?
Our manager, a little stiff but a very good fellow. He'll be delighted to hear that you are coming into the firm.
Perhaps I better bring my revolver in case he isn't.
Yes, a good joke that. A good joke, but only a joke, of course.
Philip goes out. James, following him, turns at the door and looks round the room in a bewildered way. Was it a dream, or wasn't it? He will never be quite certain.
Stars fading, but I linger on, dear, still craving your kiss. I'm longing to linger till dawn, just saying this. Sweet dreams till sunbeams find you. Sweet dreams that leave all worries far behind you.
Hey, Matt again, just to finish up. Now, I wanted to spread some positivity, and that's why I'm making these videos, that hopefully you can watch them and take an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4, I think 5 or 6 if you watch all of the ones we've done so far, out to chill out, relax and have fun. However, if you don't feel okay, if you feel like you're not coping, that's fine. If you feel like you're okay and you feel bad because other people aren't, that's fine. Please, please look after yourselves. It's okay. We will come out of this, we will come through this, and we will be stronger because of it. And for now, all we can do is hope for the best and look for small joys in our lives. So if this has made you smile, if this has made you happy, we made this for you. And the other thing I want to say is, if you want to get involved in my isolation theatre, I don't care who you are, I don't care if you've acted before, anyone at all. If you'd like to take part in one of these projects, to take your mind off things, to give yourself something to do, whatever, because you've always wanted to do it, it doesn't matter. If you want to do this, please get in contact with me, and I will make sure something happens. Whether that's you'd like to write something, or you've written something you'd like us to do, you'd like to act in it, whatever. We're here for you, we're a community, we love each other, and we support each other. So thank you for watching, take care of yourselves, and stay safe. Bye-bye.